Hello, all good people. Today's video is about spirulina. Spirulina is such a superfood, a super supplement that is really worth recording a whole video about. It has been known for a long time. Even the ancient Aztecs used it as a food. It is such a blue-green algae, unicellular, which has attracted attention also literally recently people involved in space, because it grows well in weightlessness. And since it is a very good source of nutrients, vitamins, and trace elements, it was naturally immediately used in the space industry. Nowadays, spirulina is very available in the form of various supplements, and it is really very useful. First, because it has a very good nutritional composition. 1 tablespoon of spirulina, it is about 7 grams of dry powder, has about 4 grams of complete protein. And the protein there is so complete that it is close in quality to chicken protein. That is, it has all the necessary amino acids. In addition, a lot of vitamins. Well, for example, B vitamins. Vitamin B1 is contained there in the amount of about 11% of the daily human requirement. Under the daily requirement of a person, we understand the diet of a person who eats about 2,000 kilocalories a day. And vitamin B2 contains as much as 15% of a person's daily requirement. Vitamin B3, aka nicotinic acid, 4% of the daily requirement. Copper, 21%. Iron, 11%. And there are also fatty acids, both omega-6 and omega-3, approximately 1 gram each in a 1-to-1 ratio. And finally, there is a little bit of carbohydrates, as much as 1.7 grams. And accordingly, all this, proteins, fats, carbohydrates in spirulina, give 1 tablespoon of profit energy of 20 kilocalories. That is, it is quite a bit and does not harm people who are even on a diet or watching their weight. I will say right away that, of course, there are also other microelements. Almost all of them are necessary for humans, but on a much smaller scale in spirulina. But to consider spirulina as some source of dietary protein, let's say, or omega-3, or even B vitamins, well, probably not 100%, because we do not eat usually more than 2 to 3 grams of spirulina per day. The usual dosages, I'll tell you later, is somewhere around 2 to 3 grams of spirulina a day as a supplement. And it doesn't give us much in the way of vitamins, but nevertheless, it adds something to the piggy bank. Of course, but other properties of spirulina are much more interesting, in particular, its antioxidant activity. And it is precisely due to the substance that gives the blue-green color. This substance, or substances, is called phycocyanins. Phycocyanins are chemical compounds that can bind free radicals. Free radicals are chemically active molecules that have unstable electrons in their outer orbit, and because of this, are able to damage our insides, our cells, our tissues. Where do free radicals come from? We have them as a result of our life activities and as a result of environmental factors acting on us. As a result of the energy we produce in our cells, we constantly produce various products called metabolites. That is such an exhaust. You can compare it. When a fire is burning, doing something useful, there is always some smoke. This smoke is formed in our cells when we produce energy. This smoke is reactive nitrogen and oxygen compounds, which then destroy our DNA, RNA, mitochondria, cell membranes, leading to the accumulation of various DNA damage in the body that can cause inflammation, collapse, various chronic diseases, joint destruction, neurodegenerative changes, damage to blood vessel walls, and finally, aging. Since free radicals can trigger chronic inflammation processes, antioxidants are quite successful in combating all this good stuff. We have our own antioxidant system in our body, but the older we get, the worse it performs its functions. So it would be very desirable to attract external antioxidants. These phycocyanins from spirulina do this job very well. Therefore, it is the antioxidant activity of spirulina that comes first. Here, it is just on top of its game. The next beneficial property is, of course, to reduce bad cholesterol, that is, low-density lipoproteins, where cholesterol comes in. In fact, there is no such thing as good and bad cholesterol. Its formula is the same. But so it has become customary that bad cholesterol is called low-density lipoproteins. These are particles that contain fats, proteins, and so, depending on the percentage composition of cholesterol, either high-density or low-density lipoproteins are called high-density lipoproteins. And accordingly, these lipoproteins have more or less protein in them. Low-density lipoproteins are called bad because they carry cholesterol into the walls of blood vessels. And just the use of spirulina reduces the appearance of low-density lipoproteins in our blood. And not only that, thanks to the fact that it has antioxidant activity, it also reduces the oxidation of this bad cholesterol. The thing is that bad cholesterol itself is not so bad. It is terrible when the wall of blood vessels is damaged. And from this we, as you have already realized, also protect spirulina because it blocks free radicals and they are less damaging to the vessel wall. That's first of all. And secondly, the damaged vessel wall then begins to form atherosclerotic plaques when bad cholesterol, low-density lipoproteins, penetrate it. And this bad cholesterol begins to oxidize inside the vascular wall. Spirulina also saves us from oxidation. So it acts here in a dual way. It protects the vessel wall and protects the bad cholesterol from oxidation. So it has an anti-atherosclerotic effect and can be very useful for people who have chronic inflammatory diseases of blood vessels, atherosclerotic lesions, some unstable plaques. It can improve, reduce the progression of atherosclerotic plaques, reduce the inflammation of atherosclerotic plaques, and prevent a stroke or heart attack from eventually developing. Spirulina also has an anti-carcinogenic effect. Experiments were conducted on precancerous conditions of the oral cavity, and the use of spirulina, literally 2 grams per day, caused regression of precancerous conditions. Therefore, people who fear the development of cancerous processes in themselves should also think about the use of spirulina. The next good properties of spirulina: it has an effect on runny nose. Who would have thought? It turns out that spirulina blocks allergic rhinitis. That is, it is a runny nose that develops as a result of the presence of allergens. When a person, for example, runs snot because of the fact that the house lives in the favorite cat, or pollen appears on the street during the flowering of trees. And all this can be controlled either by medicines, which can be expensive, can be ineffective, or you can use 2 grams of spirulina, and it is as effective against allergic rhinitis as any drops and pills. So allergy sufferers should take note of this wonderful property. Another interesting property of spirulina: it contains compounds that make nitric oxide. We need nitric oxide to dilate blood vessels. People suffering from hypertension, there are often disorders in the vascular wall when these walls cease to produce the right amount of nitric oxide. This makes the blood vessels not relax. Since the vessels are not relaxed, the lumen of the arteries remains narrow and blood pressure rises. But spirulina contains substances that increase the formation of nitric oxide in the blood. And as a result, the vessel walls expand and blood pressure drops. Well, and there's also another group of these understudied indicators. There are few studies that suggest that spirulina may increase endurance in athletes because it is a source of nitric oxide on the one hand and antioxidant action on the other. There is also not enough research on the fact that spirulina can lower blood sugar levels. That is, it can be used by people who have diabetes. And finally, spirulina can be useful for people who have anemia. That is, a lack of hemoglobin in the blood. And since spirulina contains iron, I already said, it can help people fight anemia. Well, here's the thing about vitamin B12. It doesn't contain this vitamin that people need for B12 deficiency anemia. So that's why spirulina doesn't work here. Well, naturally, there can certainly be negative reactions when using spirulina. But negative reactions are not specific to spirulina as such. They simply occur in the form of allergies. Any food can also develop an allergy. That is, various disorders of the gastrointestinal tract, well, some fever, but in rare cases, skin rashes, muscle pain, and so on. So if you decide to take spirulina and suddenly something went wrong, well, of course, you have to stop and figure out why it is so. So what are the recommended doses of spirulina? Generally accepted doses are 2 to 3 grams per day. It is available in both powders and 500 milligram tablets. So if we take 500 milligram tablets, it is usually taken in 2 tablets 2 to 3 times a day. That is, it is necessary to divide it into 3 intakes in order to be easily tolerated. That's the standard dosage. But by the way, there is a study when people took 10 grams of spirulina for 6 months, and they had no negative effects at all. So if you like it, you can probably use up to a tablespoon of spirulina. But you probably shouldn't take more than that. I wouldn't recommend more than 7 grams. Well, if you are a supporter of moderate effects, then 3 grams of spirulina will be just enough for you. And to summarize, although spirulina is a very good source of various micro and macronutrients, protein, and even omega-3 acids, its main effect is the presence of phycocyanins and its antioxidant properties. It is precisely because of its antioxidant properties that it is worth looking at, because fighting free radicals, those substances that cause chronic inflammation, is the most important thing. So in this way, we defeat aging, we defeat chronic inflammation, and we become healthier. And we also get in a good mood. That's it. Thank you all so much for watching to the end.